This is the QTV Nightly News, which is also on Q Radio 103.3 FM. I am Jacqueline Coley. Thank you for joining us. Here are the headlines. The People's Democratic Organization for Independence and Socialism, PDOIS, popularly called DOI in the Gambia, one of the country's oldest political parties, on Saturday held its biennial Congress, which had been postponed from December 2025. The Westminster Foundation for Democracy, WFD, has launched a nationwide study on violence against women in politics in the Gambia to address one of the major barriers to women's political participation. QCell customers, Q Group staff and fans of Q Radio's Sunureo program, including elderly, men, women and children, on Saturday participated in a 7-kilometer walk for health from QCell headquarters on Caraba Avenue to Fajara. This year, as the world commemorates International Day of Education 2026 on the 24th of January under the theme, The Power of Youth in Co-Creating Education, the Gambia's recent education gains highlight how sustained investment and reforms are expanding opportunities for children and youth across the country. In international news, the just ended 56th World Economic Forum Annual Meeting 2026 saw the significant gathering of nearly 3,000 global political and business leaders in Davos, Switzerland, to confront a world defined by rape, technological change, and shifting power structures. Those were the headlines. Now the news in detail. Many thanks for joining us. The People's Democratic Organization for Independence and Socialism, DOI, popularly called DOI in the Gambia, one of the country's oldest political parties, on Saturday held its biennial Congress, bringing together delegates and party members from across the country to review its direction and prepare for upcoming elections. Yafatuke has more.
Postponed from its original December 2025 date, is a platform for members to review and adopt proposed constitutional amendments, while also discussing and nominating candidates for presidential, National Assembly and local government council elections. Delegates say the discussions are focused on strengthening internal democracy and positioning the party to respond to current national challenges. Saja Sar is a delegate member from the West Coast region.
Constitution is been reviewed, and then there are a lot of things that have been changed there. So, and now just to adopt them. So many of them build their concerns, at least to put things that suits them. As a delegate, we'll go back to the community and also sensitize or give report back to those that we represent.
Decades ago, PDOIS has built its identity around social justice, accountability and popular participation. Over the years, the party has remained consistent in its ideology, earning recognition for its grassroots engagement and respect for constitutionalism and the rule of law. For long-standing members, the Congress is a time to reflect on the party's journey. Here is Hadi E.F. Njai, a veteran member of PDOIS.
This Congress reminds us why DOI has survived for so long. It has always stood for the people, and that is why many of us remain committed to the party. It also gives us the opportunity to share our ideas on the constitutional review process so that everybody's voice can be heard.
The gathering marks the continuation of Congress proceedings, which are expected to culminate in the election of members of the party's Central Committee, the body responsible for guiding the party's policies and activities between Congresses. As PDOIS looks ahead to forthcoming elections, party leaders say the Congress is a defining moment for reviewing leadership, refining its vision and reaffirming its commitment to independence, democracy and socialism. Reporting for QTV News, this is Yafatuke.
The Westminster Foundation for Democracy, WFD, has launched a nationwide study on violence against women in politics in the Gambia to address one of the major barriers to women's political participation. I attended the event and this is my report.
WFD, which opened its country office in the Gambia in 2018 in partnership with the National Assembly, is implementing the project under 2025-2026 Gambia Inclusive Unaccountable Governance Programme, with support from the UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. The research assesses the nature and scale of violence faced by women within the political space, while also identifying positive strategies and recommending practical measures to promote safer and more inclusive political spaces. The study examines how fear, trauma, and emotional risk shapes the everyday realities of women in politics. It also centers the voices and experiences of women whose political journey have been shaped often quietly and painfully by violence. Tabunjai Sarr is the Westminster Foundation for Democracy's country representative.
Violence against women in politics is now widely recognized as a distinct category of political violence, deployed to delegitimize women as political actors, silence dissent, restrict political participation, and maintain existing power structures.
The WFD study shows violence against women in politics remains a deeply rooted challenge as more women seek leadership roles in systems traditionally dominated by men, making the study a critical step towards strengthening democracy and gender equality in the Gambia. Honorable Fatoumata Tumanjai, NAM for Banjul South and chairperson of the National Assembly Select Committee on Gender, reiterates the role of women in politics and how they remained marginalized.
For too many Gambian women, the political arena remains a space marked by intimidation, marked by harassment, and systemic discrimination. Violence against women in politics is not always a physical blow. It can be psychological, it can be sexual, it can be economical, and today it has taken a completely new rampant dimension, the terrifying form, digital abuse.
Here is Ellie Booth from the British High Commission.
Despite decades of advocacy and growing awareness and some progress, violence continues to affect women in every society, including here in the Gambia. Women in politics face not only the broader risks of gender-based violence, but also targeted attacks, specifically because they choose to occupy public spaces and exercise leadership.
Despite the milestones achieved, such as the increased number of women who contested the most recent council elections and the growing visibility of women in political spaces, the struggle for genuine representation and equal participation remains far from over. Structural barriers, societal biases in a strongly patriarchal society, and limited access to opportunities continue to hinder women's full involvement in decision-making processes. It will be interesting to see whether this changes in what is a presidential election year for the country. Reporting for QTV News, I am Jacqueline Collie.
QCell customers, Q Group staff and fans of Q Radio's Sunureo program, including elderly men, women and children, on Saturday participated in a 7-kilometer walk for health from QCell headquarters on Caraba Avenue to Fajara. As we hear in this report by Ansumane Sonyasi, the walk, organized by Q Radio in partnership with QCell and the Q Group Foundation's Settle Sunureo initiative, also attracted participants from the Gambia Armed Forces, the police and the Red Cross.
The second edition of the Sunureo Walk for Health took a different approach from the inaugural event. While the first edition focused solely on physical exercise, Saturday's walk combined fitness with environmental sanitation, thanks to the partnership with QCell and the Q Group Foundation Settle Sunureo initiative. Participants collected rubbish along the route from QCell headquarters on Kairaba Avenue to Fajara, clearing litter deposited by the public. The exercise drew people of all ages, including elderly men and women who actively took part in the cleanup. Several participants expressed satisfaction with the initiative, welcoming the addition of environmental cleaning to the walk. They also encouraged the public to engage in regular physical exercise and to maintain clean and healthy surroundings at all times.
We are here because this is a good initiative, one that should be embraced by all. Cleanliness is very important, and when combined with physical exercise, the results is always one of immense benefit.
This is a good initiative and should be emulated by other institutions. QCell and Q Radio have taken the lead in showing us all how it should be done. I urge everyone to support the QCell Settle Sunireu initiative.
It is important to exercise regularly because it helps us to keep fit, especially for the elderly. Also, we have to keep the environment clean. This is all important as it will continue to keep us all safe and healthy.
On behalf of the Q Group, Chairman Mohamed Jah, Madam Aissatou Jah, Executive Director of the Q Group Foundation, and Malika, General Manager of QTV and Q Radio, thanked participants for taking part in the event and for their continued support and patronage of the Q Group.
I have always said that QCell is here for all Gambians, and today's event confirms that. Thank you for coming and for showing a strong commitment to national development. I also want to remind you all to watch what you eat, as it is important for your health.
Q Group Foundation Settle Sunireu initiative is here to complement national efforts in keeping our environment clean. This is why we're happy to partner with Q Radio Sunireu program, and I can assure you that we will always support such initiatives.
What we eat very much impacts our health in many ways, so I encourage us all to be mindful of the food we eat. For us at QTV and Q Radio, health is very important. That is why we have programs like Sunireu that caters for all important issues such as health and sanitation.
Other senior Q Group managers, Ami Sise, Marketing Manager at QCell, Buri Sen, QTV's Marketing Manager, and Suleiman Conte, pioneer of the Q Radio Sunireu Walk for Health initiative, underscored the significance of the event and expressed appreciation to participants, urging them to maintain regular physical exercise. And while thanking them for their continued patronage, they reaffirmed the Q Group's unwavering commitment to supporting national development initiatives. Answane Sonyasi for KTV News.
We will now go for a commercial break. When we return, we have more national and international news stories. Do stay tuned.
buntu liggéeykaay United Nations seen bànqaas bi dox ci tëddeelini dund ak mbayteef di Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations FAO ak ministre bi saytu wàllu wér garam gi ñoo am ay sarta yoo xam ne nii danañu dimbale ngir nag ñu mun a wàññi sukar tey tamit ñu mun am ndox ci suñu yaram njëlbeen wàññil sukar bi nga xam ne nii moom ngay jëfoo ci sa ataaya wala yeneen xeeti naan yu tàng yi tànnali tamit yeneen xeeti juus yi nga xam ne nii seen sukar dafa tuuti lu mel ni ki wonjo ak juusi buy oytul snack yi nga xam ne nii dañ ànd ak sukar ak juusi sachet yi nga xam ne nii ñu ngi koy jëf rawatina nag xale yi te it waxtu nekk naanal ndox ni xeeti naan yu sedd yi nga xam ne dañ am sukar lu mel ni ki soda ak juus yi ñuy defal nag coppali bu yéwén ci sa wàlli wér-gu-yaram te itamit nag ñu gën a yaxanal nag Gambia ci wér-gu-yaram goo xam ne ñun ñëpp ñoo ciy ànd toftal nag sarta yi nga xam ne nii moom lañ teg ci suñu xeeti ñami tànneef yi.
Welcome back. You're watching QTV News. Now this year, as the world commemorates the International Day of Education 2026 on the 24th of January under the theme, The Power of Youth in Co-Creating Education, the Gambia's recent education gains highlight how sustained investment and reforms are expanding opportunities for children and youth across the country. Yafatu Gay reports.
National data covering the past 6 years shows steady progress in access to education and learning outcomes. Primary school enrollment has risen to over 90%, while the number of primary-aged children out of school has declined significantly. Literacy among young people aged 15 to 24 has also continued to improve, reaching approximately 3/4 of the youth population in recent years, an important indicator of a strengthened foundational learning. Central to these gains have been the expansion of free basic and secondary education, which has reduced financial barriers for families and enabled more children, particularly girls, to remain in school through the upper and basic education levels. These efforts are gained by the Education Sector Strategic Plan 2026 to 2030, implemented by the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education (MOPSI), which prioritizes equitable access, inclusive education, improved teaching training, curriculum reform, and stronger monitoring of learning outcomes. At the early grades, the introduction of local languages as a medium of instruction has improved classroom participation and comprehension, especially in rural communities. By grounding learning in familiar linguistic and cultural contexts, the approach strengthens confidence and supports long-term academic success. Beyond the basic education, reforms led by the Ministry of Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology (MOHEST) has expanded pathways for youth through increased access to technical and vocational education and learning (TVET) and strengthened tertiary education. The expansion of the University of the Gambia, particularly in STEM and skills-oriented programs, reflect a growing focus on aligning education with labor market needs and national development priorities. International partners such as UNICEF, ActionAid, and others have played a complementary role supporting school infrastructure, inclusive education initiative, teacher development, and community engagement. These partnerships have helped translate policy commitments into tangible improvements at the school and community levels. Despite this progress, challenges remain, including secondary school completion, learning quality at higher levels, and the transition from education to employment. In response, government and partners continue to prioritize foundational literacy and numeracy, teacher capacity building, digital learning, and sustainable education financing to ensure that gains are not only expanded but sustained. As the country joins the globe in observance of the International Day of Education, the Gambia's experience underscores a key lesson: education systems are strongest when young voices help shape them, ensuring learning that is inclusive, relevant, and responsive to the future they will lead. Reporting for QTV News, this is Yafati Gay.
Coming up next, we have international news. The 56th World Economic Forum Annual Meeting 2026 saw the significant gathering of nearly 3,000 global political and business leaders in Davos, Switzerland, to confront a world defined by rapid technological change and shifting power structures. Mam Nabuka has the special extended report.
Observer may have been left with the impression that US President Donald Trump was the only item on the forum's agenda. Despite hogging most of the headlines, this was very far from the truth. The forum's theme was a spirit of dialogue and lasted for 5 days, where heads of state, cultural figures, business titans, and voices from civil society and academia gathered to address the current global landscape where traditional rules-based orders are fading, replaced by a complex multipolar reality. The agenda focused on 5 main priorities, including cooperation in a contested world, responsible innovation, particularly in relation to AI and its significant threat to future job markets, unlocking economic growth, investing in human development, and environmental sustainability. Speaking in light of the event, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney delivered what has become arguably the defining statement of the week, and his sentiments were echoed by Kristalina Georgieva, Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund.
The rules-based order is fading. We believe that from the fracture, we can build something bigger, better, stronger, more just.
The fact that the world is now moving to multipolarity also means that parts of the world are becoming more dynamic, economically stronger.
Here is Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, and Ruth Porat, Chief Investment Officer of Alphabet, on how AI should be approached for development.
I would advocate that for the developing countries, build your infrastructure, get engaged in AI, and recognize that AI is likely to close the technology divide.
If we don't protect on the downside around kids, around jobs, around energy affordability, we shouldn't actually have the license to pursue the upside.
Fatih Birol, Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, spoke on global electricity consumption, while Esther Bejet, a prominent voice in climate action, shed light on green economy performance.
One data center consumes electricity as much as a town with 100,000 households. This is the age of electricity, and how we are going to meet this.
Today, the green economy is already a 5 trillion economy, and it's growing twice as fast as the revenues of the past. It is competitive. It is bringing resilience.
Some struck a note of optimism amid much of the gloom. For leaders like Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the Director General of the World Trade Organization, Amitabh Bihar, the Executive Director of Oxfam International, and France's President Emmanuel Macron, unity and a sense of duty is all that is needed to set things right.
A lot is happening. It is disruptive, but we need steady nerves, calculated approaches, and answers.
I meet citizens group, I can see that there's anger, and the anger is just about ensuring a life with dignity for everyone.
This is our duty as business leaders, as head of states and governments, and we have everything in order to deliver this agenda.
The billionaire Lawrence Fink, the interim co-chair of the World Economic Forum's Board of Trustees, and Christine Lagarde, president of the European Central Bank, had a powerful message to share.
The most important thing we must do is listen. We're not going to agree on everything. In fact, I'm sure we're going to disagree. But it's more necessary than ever before to have that conversation.
That is going to be a factor of willingness of people to accept and tolerate different paradigms, different cultural preferences, and different views of the world.
As the forum ended, many speakers had said they did not want it to be just another talking shop. As such, the focus now shifts from high-level debate heard here to the practical challenge of translating these dialogues into shared prosperity and a dignified life for the most vulnerable. Mamna Buka, reporting for QTV News.
Also in international news, Guinea Bissau's military rulers have announced that presidential and legislative elections will be held in December, which will be more than a year after seizing power in a coup in November 2025. The decision comes amid sustained pressure from regional and international partners for a return to civilian rule. Usman Jata reports.
Guinea-Bissau's transitional president, General Orton Tam, has signed a decree setting 6th December as the date for presidential and parliamentary elections. The announcement followed a meeting on Wednesday with members of the National Transitional Council, senior military figures, government officials and representatives of the National Electoral Commission. Speaking to reporters, General Tam says the authorities were satisfied that the conditions were now in place to organize what he describes as free, fair and transparent elections. The military took power in November 2025 after overthrowing President Omaro Sissoco Embalo just days after general elections had been held and one day before results were due to be announced. The coup drew widespread condemnation from the West African Regional Bloc ECOWAS and the African Union, both of which suspended Guinea-Bissau from their institutions and called for a swift return to constitutional order. Following the takeover, the junta led by General Orton Tam and operating under the name the High Military Command for the Restoration of Order announced a one-year transition period. A transitional charter released in December barred the interim president and his prime minister from standing in the upcoming elections. Guinea-Bissau has a long record of political instability with at least 9 coups or attempted coups since independence from Portugal in 1974. The military has repeatedly intervened in politics, including major takeovers in 1980 1999, 2003, 2012, and most recently in 2025. Attention is now turning to who may contest the presidency later this year. While the transitional charter excludes the interim president from running, analysts say skepticism remains, given a broader regional pattern of coup leaders seeking to extend their time in power. Osman Chata, QTV News.
And before we end, here's a recap of the headlines. The People's Democratic Organization for Independence and Socialism, DOI, popularly called as DOI in the Gambia, one of the country's oldest political parties, on Saturday held its biennial Congress, which had been postponed from December 2025. The Westminster Foundation for Democracy, WFD, has launched a nationwide study on violence against women in politics in the Gambia to address one of the major barriers to women's political participation. QCell's customers, Q Group staff, and fans of Q Radio's Sunureo program, including elderly men, women, and children, on Saturday participated in a 7-kilometer walk for health from QCell headquarters on Caraba Avenue to Fajara. This year, as the world commemorates the International Day of Education 2026 on the 24th of January under the theme, The Power of Youth in Co-Creating Education, the Gambia's recent education gains highlight how sustained investment and reforms are expanding opportunities for children and youth across the country. In international news, the just ended 56th World Economic Forum Annual Meeting 2026 saw the significant gathering of nearly 3,000 global political and business leaders in Davos, Switzerland, to confront a world defined by rapid technological change and shifting power structures. That's all for this bulletin. Join us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. for the Weekend Review. Mamadou Mbodj and Ade Drame. Thanks for watching. It's midday in our studios. They're watching QT. Lala. Today Saturday, Daddy. Yo, hamuloyo. Good afternoon. You're watching QTV Midday News, and I'm Jacqueline Kolime. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. That's all we have for you in this edition of the QTV Midday News. Join us tonight at 8 p.m. for the QTV Nightly News. Many thanks for joining us, and bye.